Hey all, it's Tim here. I figured I'd dust off the cobwebs on this channel here. I haven't really done much as far as video because things have been pretty chaotic lately, and I've been trying to kind of get back into this work programming and writing these new books, and it's been kind of a struggle, but I think I'm getting there. And I figured I'd start a unscheduled stream here and just have some fun with the weather for this evening. Anyway, I've started off with this Weather Service page. See this here? This is the National Weather Service. Uh, this is the display of watches, warnings, advisories. And what do we have here? Looks like this color coding here is going to be for heat. So it looks like things are really warming up there in the desert southwest. What is this pink stuff in the Great Basin? Well, let's scroll down here and take a look. Red flag warning, so it looks like we got winds going on there, probably some low humidities. And there's that beige there in the northern part of the Great Basin. That beige is going to be a fire weather watch or possibly a special weather statement. Okay, so we'll be taking a look at that on this stream. So there's our heat right there. In the central U.S., we have a severe thunderstorm watch for Kansas. Looks like a couple warnings there. And not much going on in Texas here. And then going out east, what do we got here? We got flood warnings down the Appalachians. And in the Carolinas, more heat. So we'll be taking a look at that. Looks like a few severe weather warnings there in Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. So that's the big picture going on. So why don't we take a look at the desert southwest? What I'll do is I'll go to my weather page. Let me pull the browser screen down so you can take a look here. I've got this link here for my weather forecasting resources, and in fact there's the URL if you want to go there. You're welcome to use it. It's weathergraphics.com/wx. So this is where I go to find links for analysis, satellite data, stuff like that. Let's take a look at the satellite real quick. I don't have a link on here for Nevada, but that's pretty easy to do. We'll just go to College DuPage. I'll pull up the dot there that's over Laughlin, and there we go. This shows us kind of the big picture of what's happening in the desert southwest. So it looks like we have a few monsoon storms along the higher terrain of Arizona. So this is going to be just south of Flagstaff and west of the Grand Canyon. Not quite all the way to Las Vegas, but away from that in the lower elevations, looks like clear skies really heating things up there. And then as we go further north, I'm going to have to pull up a different frame for that. We'll go into the Nevada Great Basin, and looks like a lot of cumulus. See that? A lot of cumulus along the mountains right there, a few CBs and showers. And then as you get into the Sierra Nevada, I don't know if you can see that. Let me pull up I got a bit of my next book project there off to the left, so don't worry about that. That'll be out in a few weeks, I think. So here, the Sierra Nevada from about Lake Tahoe all the way down. Looks like some good storms going along that. Then elsewhere, it just looks to be pretty hot. Look at that. We can see the desert right there, the Great Salt Lake Desert. So if you're going out to drive your car on the Salt Flats, that's probably the place to do it there. Let's take a look at the analysis chart for the desert southwest. I'm going to pick the Las Vegas sector. This is the UCAR surface charts, and you can use digital atmosphere, which is my program, but if you're just doing if you just want to go in really quickly and see what's going on, these web links work pretty well too. Man, look at those temperatures, 113 there in Vegas. And I lived for 3 years in Vegas back in the 90s, and when I was forecasting out there, and I don't think I ever saw 113. I saw 111. That was in 1992, I think, June of 92. So this is definitely some major heat here. Got 117 there in Laughlin, and then further south, not too bad in Phoenix, 109. So it looks like the heat wave kind of tapers off as you get into Tucson. 103, that's not too bad. But as you go west and north, yeah, look at that. 111 there at China Lake. Then 110 at Redding and Red Bluff. and 102 there at Tonopah. And I worked on the Tonopah test range, which is about right there. It was about 40 miles northwest of Area 51, if you probably know where that is, but that's not where I worked. I worked at the Tonopah test range. It was right there. And I think the hottest we ever got on a given summer was maybe 98 to 100. So this is some very severe heat here. Where's that coming from? Well, we can take a look at an upper level chart. What do I want to pull up? I'm going to go to the Meteostar because they got some nice colorful models. I'll pick on that real quick, pick up one of those charts. We'll go to the 250 millibar chart. That's kind of a good overall picture of what's happening. So I'm going to wait for that to come up, and hopefully this doesn't kill my bandwidth here. I'm going to, if it starts hanging a little bit, don't worry about it. It'll be over once this finishes loading. So I'm loading the charts, and we'll look at the first one here real quick. Let me grab my window and kind of move things around. There we go. So this is the picture right here for North America. This is at 18Z, so this is at noon. And this shows conditions at 250 millibars, which is up at about 34,000 feet. So it's showing jet stream energy across the northern Pacific coming down into the Pacific Northwest, and there's a jet streak right there over Wyoming. So if that's overhead, that's going to break up the heat wave. So I don't think we're seeing any of that as far north as Washington or Oregon. Then we got another segment right there over New York. So this is probably helping some of the thunderstorm activity we're seeing there in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. As far as further south, we have high pressure. It's not drawn on this particular chart, but I can see by this closed contour that it's right there in the middle. So this is an upper level high, and that's going to correspond to the position of the hottest air. So clear skies, subsidence underneath this high, all that is combining along with, the July heat to really get things going. Any relief in sight? Let me run the models forward a little bit. So now we're up to Saturday. Wow, the weekend's almost here. And August is almost here. That's a change. So Sunday, it doesn't look like a whole lot of change. The patterns are pretty stagnant. It's like another wave drops there into the Pacific Northwest. And then that does kind of kick out over the northern plains there going into Thursday next week. So maybe some severe weather in the Dakotas. I don't know if anybody is actually chasing in that area these days, but or this late in the season. But that's something to watch out for. 80 to 90 knot winds there in the Fargo, Bismarck, and International Falls area. And doesn't look like a whole lot of relief for Texas here, but I can see by the wind flow, I don't know if you can see it on the bottom there, there is this tongue here of 25, 30 knot winds out of the northwest. So it looks like there's probably a couple of weak waves, maybe an upper tropospheric trough there over Texas between these high pressure centers. So I don't think rain's going to be totally out of the picture for Texas over the next week. Anyway, I don't want to get too far into that. We were going to take a look at the west coast or the east coast too. So let me pull up a sector for that. We'll look at Baltimore. So here we got the surface chart for 2343. That's going to be about 4 minutes ago. And what's the pattern we got? Well, we've got a deep southeasterly flow because the Bermuda High is pretty well entrenched out in the Atlantic. Giant high measuring thousands of miles in diameter, and part of that is flowing across the Carolinas. So not only that, with a substance with a high, there's also these high dew points. Look at that. See the numbers in the lower left corner? Got 78 there at Wakefield, I think. I'm not too familiar with the stations there. There's 76 there around Richmond. These are some seriously high dew points. 77 here, 78, 77, 77. So that's, you're going to get some very high temperature humidity indexes with that. And it looks like a bit of a circulation If you look at the wind flow, there's kind of this thing going on. Northerly winds back behind this outflow boundary. So there's a bit of a meso-low over northern Virginia. And that's probably tied into maybe an outflow boundary, which would be lying kind of like that. So it looks like there's some enhanced lift along the mountains of the Appalachians. You can see the rain symbols and so on out through here. We'll take a quick look at this on radar. And there's some of it there northwest of Washington, D.C., and some north of Dover up in Atlantic City. So those are our storms that are going on right there. And outflow boundary just south of that. And I bet these people down here are wishing that they got a little bit of what was going on up north. Must be kind of awful to be, just, you're dying in that heat and you see the towers off to the north and you're not sure if they're going to make it down there. So that's kind of what they got going on. Let's look at the satellite picture for that area real quick. Let me pull it up from College of DuPage. We'll grab the Virginia sector, and it looks like the sun is going down out that far east. But we got a couple cells there. Let me change that color. Yeah, there's one cell there around the Roanoke area, maybe a little northeast of there. So it looks like they've come off the mountains into the plains there of Virginia. Looks like some more towers there. But off to the south, looks like things are pretty clear out along the North Carolina border. So that's kind of what's going on there. Let's see, what else do we want to look at? Yeah, let's look at the radar. I'm going to pull up the radar there. I've already got Texas going on here. And what I want to do is look at, let's see here. Let me clean this up a little bit. Let's see. Well, no, that's the wrong one. Let me just go ahead and load up the picture for Virginia. I don't know if any of you use GR Level 2 or GR Level 3, but it's a very handy radar program. And what we can do is we can go to Site and go to Select. And then we can choose one of the options here in the list. Let's see, Blacksburg, that's going to be pretty far to the southwest. Sterling is in the D.C. area. Wakefield is to the south. I guess we'll try Sterling. So the warnings come up already, and we can see a few of them out in the Chesapeake Bay area. So we're waiting for the radar data to come in. We'll take a quick look at the storms and see what the character is and anything interesting about them. And while we wait, we can click on the warnings and see what's going on there. So we've got a severe thunderstorm warning there. They've got that for Northumberland County and Lancaster County. And what I like to do is look at this and see if it's radar indicated or see if a spotter detected it. Then I look at what they were checking out as far as hail sizes and winds. So it looks like a pretty garden variety warning. And there it is. Looks like a big storm there. Let me zoom in. So this looks pretty multicellular. I don't see anything looking like a supercell here. It's going across the Chesapeake Bay waters, heading probably, well, can't really say which way it's moving. I need to run the animation. Yeah, it's moving east-southeast there. So let me drop the warning so we can get a clearer picture of what's going on. Let's see, where did we lose the warnings? I don't know. I don't want to waste too much time here. There's probably a... Yeah, I'm looking at the panel up at the very top. There should be a speed button for... that's not it. That's not it either. Anyway. Oh yeah, the check boxes. Okay, so there we go. So it looks a little bit clearer now. One thing I want you to look at is the gradients on this storm. When I'm talking about gradients, I'm talking about the distance between high intensity echoes like here and low intensity echoes here. See, the gradient here is pretty weak. Same thing out here. It's very weak on the backside. And I don't see any areas really where the gradient is very strong. Maybe here a little bit. And certainly some along this tail end here. So I'm not really looking at any severe signatures as far as gradients. Another thing I might look for is overhang, tilt on the storms, that kind of thing. For that, I'll go up to the higher tilts. So now I'm in the top part of the storm here, and I'm picking up the tops of the updrafts. Okay, that one's an older frame. That's 2346. This is 2350. I'm going to set a mark right here on that tower. This is going to be up at 38,000 feet. I can read that off the bottom down here. So when I have the cursor over that mark, I've got 38,000 feet. So I'm going to compare that with the lower tilt. And I can see that it's not really overhanging the inflow area off to the south. It's pretty much sitting over the precipitation core. So it looks like I don't really see too much of a signature there as far as anything suggesting supercells or severe multicells. There's certainly a risk of hail, large hail or high winds, but that would be about it, really. Base velocity will give us an idea of ground level winds, and I'm picking up velocities. This is up at 11,000 feet, though. This is pretty far from the radar, but it's showing about 11,000 feet, maybe 58 knots. That's nothing. I'm sorry, I'm misreading that. 34 knots, 28. That's not really too strong, really. Storm relative velocity also shows the stronger outbound velocities here, strongest inbound velocities. I mean, there is a little bit of a couplet here, but it's not that very well defined. I mean, I should say, let me clarify that. It's actually not that compact and intense. So I've got maybe 33 knots outbound, 18 knots inbound. That's kind of on the weak side. It's a very broad circulation. Let me set a marker here. I'll measure out to this part of the storm here, and I'm getting about 5 to 6 miles there. So it's kind of a broad area of rotation. And it's way back in the core of the storm here, so that's kind of embedded, and I really wouldn't expect too much out of that. What I'd be checking out is along the leading edge, like out here. Like you see what's going on here with this latest frame that came in. There's this is a little bit more compact circulation. So I've got about 32 knots outbound and about 37 inbound. So this is going to be about 60 knots of shear. That's getting up there. That's starting to get up there a little bit. And I'm going to look at the diameter of that, place the marker there. That's a diameter, I'm looking at the bottom here. That's a diameter of 3 miles. So this is getting a little bit more into severe territory. So I would be watching this more closely. It looks like further down the line I'm not seeing a whole lot going on. So I'm going to set that marker right here at the center of the couplet, and then check that out on the base reflectivity. So it looks like it is kind of embedded, but we are seeing a bit of a, I don't know, I'm losing there's a word for that, it's escaping me right now, but yeah, a little extension of the echoes. So that what we're seeing there kind of corresponds to the outflowish part of that couplet that we saw there in the storm relative velocity. So see that right there. So that's probably a little enhanced area of outflow wind probably coming through this area. And this is over the water, so this is not bothering anybody right now. But if I was out here in this part of Virginia, I'd probably be keeping an eye on this particular storm. Anything at higher tilts, well, look at that. You can see higher intensities here, so a pretty strong downdraft coming down here, corresponding to the outflowish area of that couplet. So that'll be something to watch there. I don't really know what's going to happen at this point, but we would just kind of monitor things, and I think if I watch this another 10 or 20 minutes, I'll get a better idea what's going on. So let's see, tops on the storm here. Highest tilt that I've got on this is 47,000 feet, so pretty good height there. But we do expect that in the summertime because the troposphere is up there pretty high. Getting a few taps there at 54, so pretty good storm there. Sure, it looks pretty ominous coming in there onto the shore there of that peninsula, I guess Delmarva, whatever they call it. So there we go, and the rest of it looks all kind of like multicellular junk. So that'll probably give you a little bit of a brief shower as those come through. So the big thing right there is coming onto that peninsula there around, I guess, Wallops Island or whatever. I don't really know too many of the cities out there. Okay. Anyway, I think that's about all I want to cover. Like I said, I'm kind of shaking off the cobwebs and kind of figuring out where I want to go with this. We're kind of in between. We're kind of in the doldrums as far as it's summertime. There's not a whole lot going on. And last year, July 20th is about when I stopped the channel temporarily because there wasn't really anything going on. But the next thing to watch is going to be out in the Atlantic. Got a couple of systems here that we'll be watching. Let me see if that's in my window. Yeah, I see that right there. Let's see, do I have 5-day outlook? Yeah, there we go. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this right here. Possibly going into the first week of August. We may have a shot there of maybe some tropical storm activity or even hurricane activity there in the northern Caribbean and across Dominica and Cuba. So we'll watch that. And I think if those really get developing, I will keep the channel going, and maybe we'll do some live streams and kind of have fun with that. Anyway, that's about all I want to cover for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to try to come back tomorrow and kind of keep this thing going, and we'll try to learn more about severe weather forecasting and look at some interesting things and see what goes on. Anyway, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.